So we're going to be talking about a guy named Jack Hibbs. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but he's a televangelist. He's an extremist, a nutcase. Hates gay people, hates evolution, hates Marxism, hates all this stuff that these people hate. Anyways, he has a church in California, I think, somewhere in that vicinity. He did a live interview recently with our very own The Flashpoint crew. If you don't know Flashpoint, it's a TV show owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland. It's crazy, dude. The dude right here on the left, this is Gene Bailey. He's the host. And on the right here, this is Jack Hibbs. And oh boy, did it get nutty. But let me give you a little bit of lead up. Let me show you who Jack Hibbs is. Let's talk about who the guy is and what he believes. And while we do, we're going to play a little bit of Breath of the Wild 2. I'm just kind of going around getting some Korok, so not too big of a deal. I will not spoil anything, I promise you. You will not see anything spoiled. Any major plot points or anything like that. Nothing will be spoiled in the game if you're watching. This one is from mid-July 2021.
When two people of the same sex get together, it's out of sheer wanton lust and pleasure only. For self.
And straight people never do that. So, straight people only ever get together to birth babies and no other reason. Any other position that they're in, position that they might use other than positions intended to make a baby, don't happen with straight people because they love God. So
nothing comes of it. No life can come from it. No family can come from it.
Okay, now that's simply untrue. He's talking about gay people here. Let me clarify something for you, okay? And then we'll continue with Jack Hibbs. I wondered to myself, how did being gay evolve? Because he brings that up in a minute. How did it evolve? He says it disproves your belief in evolution instantaneously. There can't both be gay people and also evolution at the same time. So I got to wondering, how did this happen? How did we get gay people coming along with evolution as it is? And what I've discovered, correct me if I'm wrong, add any information in the comments. I think this field is still being kind of studied right now. Evolution, you would think, would filter that out. The answer lies in the fact that there are tons and tons and tons of children who are unwanted by their parents or lose parents who, they died in an accident or whatever. I mean, there are a billion explanations for things that happen to children, to children's parents, tragically, leaving the children alone to be raised by nobody. Now, evolution, I'm speaking of it as though it's like a sentient thing. That's not right. It's not. It's just kind of a natural process. But evolution wanted to create a scenario where people could continue on and take care of these children, and it wouldn't affect our sexual reproduction negatively. So, gay people came along. Gay people love taking care of kids. They love having families. Gay people commonly were close family members in, various families who lost children, who don't have children of their own, and who would take in children who were lost or who had nobody else to take care of themselves or to take care of them. So that's the evolutionary explanation for homosexuality. When you live in a community, that community has extra children who have lost their parents or who don't want to be taken care of by their parents otherwise or whatever. And here you have families who definitely do want children. So, Anyway, that's the explanation. Let's keep listening to this guy, Jack Hibbs. Like I said, this is 2021, and he's going to rail against the gay community, and he's going to rail against evolution, as usual. Now that I've just explained it, let's see what else he says here.
No life can come from it. No family can come from it. And let me insert this. If you're an evolutionist, you have to be against same-sex union.
You don't. You don't, actually, but okay.
If you're an evolutionist, and by the way, where?
And it's, if you're an evolutionist, this term drives me absolutely nuts. Evolutionist.
Where have been the evolutionists on this topic? Because, listen, if you're an evolutionist, what is one of the statements? It's the survival of the fittest.
Yes, that is a statement that many people learned that Darwin said in 5th or 6th grade, sure. Does it mean anything? Not really. Survival of the fittest is a statement that was made by Darwin in his book, Origin of Species, written in like 1850-something or other, when he was just figuring out what evolution is and how it works for the very first time. Now, we've come a long way. We understand a lot more about evolution now than we used to. And this guy seems to be grasping at straws, looking for any reason he can to hate evolution and hate the gay community and make the claim that neither of them make any sense. Makes no sense for people to be gay or for evolution to be real.
Because, listen, if you're an evolutionist, what is one of the statements? It's the survival of the fittest, right? And in evolutionary theory, the survival of the fittest has to procreate.
The survival of the fittest has to procreate. Okay, he doesn't understand the first thing about evolution. I don't know, like, what people's education level is in this stuff. I'll tell you this. I went to school in West Virginia and knew absolutely nothing about evolution. I learned nothing about it. You know what I learned about evolution? That it was evil. That's it. So let me just give you the bare basics explanation for anybody who has had zero education in this. Let me give you the bare bones explanation. There are a few pillars in evolution of importance. The first and most important pillar is gene mutation, okay? Or let's start with gene duplication. When you reproduce, you create copies of your genes. And I'm talking copies of your genes that are completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. You have like 6 copies of the blue eye gene, right? And you only need one. It's producing it's producing at a single gene rate because it doesn't need the other 5. They're irrelevant for you to have blue eyes, right? But it created duplicate copies of these genes because that's what happens when you reproduce. You have duplicate genes. What else happens when you have when you reproduce is gene mutations. Little pieces of genes, little sections will break off and turn into something completely different than they were before. They will become, something different because of radiation, because of any number of various factors, any number of things that could cause this. Gene mutations. So you have duplications and you have mutations. And sometimes those mutations are helpful. Sometimes those mutations lead to you only needing 6 hours of sleep per night rather than 8. Sometimes those gene mutations are, irrelevant. Like, it doesn't help or hurt. You got blue eyes now. Like, who cares? There's really no difference. And sometimes those gene mutations are really, really harmful. Like you end up with a horrific deformity. That's what gene mutations do. Now, the people who have those horrific deformities, who drew the short end of the straw as far as genes go, they won't live very long. They won't produce very much within a population of people to propagate the genes that they have. The ones that have beneficial genes, on the other hand, they will propagate a great deal. They will spread their genes far and wide. They will prosper the most. They will be the most valuable, or they will be that much more valuable to the society that they're a part of, to the population they're a part of. You know, you add 4 IQ points to somebody, and they're that much more valuable to the society they're a part of, and that much more intelligent and useful and helpful and involved and interesting to the women in the in the population. I mean, I'm talking like cavemen days. I'm talking like 100,000 years ago. That's the kind of time frame we're talking here. It takes a really, really, really long time for this to change. Millions of years is how long it takes for any of this stuff to have any kind of real noticeable effect. Now, gene duplication and gene mutation are 2 pillars to evolution. And there's a third. I mean, there are a lot, but we're just going to cover 3 for the moment. The third pillar I want to cover is called natural selection, or sexual. It's just selection. Natural selection, sexual selection. There are a billion different types. Artificial selection is another. It depends on a number of factors, what you're talking about. Now, natural selection is where this group of people, or this population, is thriving and performing better than all of the others because they have this set of genes that gave them the ability to perform better than others. That's natural selection. Sexual selection is where, women are specifically, or men even, are specifically looking for somebody with this gene. Like, oh boy, I want somebody with a really broad chin because that's really attractive to me, right? That's sexual selection. We do all of this stuff with, like, plants all the time. Bananas and stuff like that. Well, bananas are clones of each other, and that's a complicated case. That's neither here nor there. And then there's artificial selection, which is where we are specifically selecting for the types of traits that we're looking for. We have apples, right? So we start with apples, and we want really red, juicy ones. We want the most tastiest apples on planet Earth. So what do? We select for those apples. We find the tastiest, most bestest apples on planet Earth, and we grow them. And then we pick the seeds from the tastiest apples on the tree from that one, and we regrow those. It's like a never-ending chain. That's the idea behind selection, generally. Selection. Not natural selection, but just selection in general. Now, that's complicated, what I just described. Took me how long? 5 minutes to describe this whole process that should have been described to people in 5th grade, but because of this guy right here and others like him, isn't. So it took him 30 seconds to start a fire, to make a claim about how gay people don't fit into natural selection or survival of the fittest or evolution or whatever else. And it took me, 5 minutes to debunk, to explain why he was wrong, why he has no idea what he's talking about. That's really the core of the problem. These people can come and start 10 fires, and I'm still back behind him putting out the first one. So, anyways, that's how evolution works, if you were curious. Now, as I said, there is an evolutionary explanation for gay people. So, yeah. I mean, what he's saying here only appeals to one group of people. His evangelical, extremist, nutcase followers. The people who want to hear this stuff. That's who this appeals to, really. Well, let's keep listening.
But if evolution's true, then there would be no such thing as homosexuality.
Simply false. There's somebody, you can hear him in the background. That's right. She has no idea. She doesn't know the first thing about how evolution works. And she's just agreeing with the guy because that's what you do.
That's right. Because over the last 400 trillion, billion, zillion, quadbillion, zillion, nillion years, evolution would have washed that out. Homosexuality, LGBTQ actions prove the existence of God.
Okay, wait. How did we get to the existence of God from all of this? What the hell are you talking about right now? This makes no sense at all. I don't understand any of this. And by the by, just to set the record straight, the universe is about 13.8 trillion years old. That is very old. And the Earth is about 4.54 billion years old. So, yeah. I don't know what all of that was about quadrillion whatevers, but yeah.
Because God's word says would be some of the outcome and actions of the last days.
Wait. I'm sorry, wait. What would be some of the outcomes in the whatevers of the last days? What's he talking about right now? I am so lost. What the hell are you going on about right now? Hold on. Let's just step back and see if we can figure out what this guy was talking about here.
Would be some of
Hold on.
actions prove the existence of God. Because God's word says would be some of the outcome and actions of the last days.
God's word says this would be some of the outcome and actions of the end? What? What are you talking about? You know, I don't know what God had to say about it. I don't really care. You know what I really care about? I care about what Jesus had to say about the LGBT community. Jesus was here. Jesus dealt with all of these issues. I think he should be the authority, right? So what did Jesus have to say about the LGBT community? Oh, he didn't say a word, did he? Uh-oh. Just picked a whole bouquet of oopsie daisies there, didn't we? Jesus, and trust me, they were around. They were there. They were hanging out. They were doing their thing. Believe me. And it was around Jesus, too. Hell, who knows? Maybe Jesus took part. Just saying, these people have no idea what they're talking about. Naturally. So anyways, that's Jack Hibbs. Let's look at a couple others that I have here of this guy here. Hang on. Here's this one I have labeled as anti-trans. You know this is bound to be entertaining. This is before the trans panic, too. Let's see. This one came out. I followed the guy around the same time, 2021. Yeah, looks like this one was mid-March 2021 when this came out. And he went on stage with a guy named, oh God, look, give me a second. His name is Tony Perkins. That's it. Tony Perkins. He's the leader of the Family Research Council, FRC, which is basically a right-wing extremist think tank that writes bills and laws and gives them to Republican politicians so that these Republican politicians can submit them, basically. That's Tony Perkins' whole goal in life. So, anyway. His message has evolved to discredit evolution, right? Exactly, Lena. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. We don't know exactly how it is that LGBT people factor into, the theory of evolution, and that means it's all fake. No, it means we have, stuff to look up. That's it. Doesn't mean anything's fake. Anyways, just ridiculous. All right, so we got Tony Perkins here on the left. He's a Christian nationalist in his own right. Believes that we should I'm not going to get into Tony Perkins right now. He's a nutcase. We'll hit him in a bit. And then we got Jack Hibbs on the right. So let's see what these people have to say to each other. Remember, this is an anti-trans message, mid-March 2022. Or 2021, I'm sorry.
Something has happened. I believe the answer is demonism.
So the trans problem is the result of demonism.
I believe it's satanic. I believe we're watching a global event take place that the Bible warned us about all along. And Satan traffics in the world of confusion. And if he can get someone confused in this area, he robs them of their God-given gender because he made that person a male or a female for a purpose to bring him glory. If Satan can get them confused, they're young, early. Notice Satan always goes after the young.
No, as a matter of fact, people who want to start culture wars and get people whipped into a blood frenzy always go after the young. Let me just show you a quick example. This guy just says...
Confused, they're young, early. Notice Satan always goes after the young.
Satan always goes after the young. Remember that, okay? This is Jack Hibbs saying this, 2021. Satan always goes after the young. This is a member of parliament in 1991 claiming that Satanism was real and that Satanists were around every corner looking for an opportunity to take advantage of our children and all of this other nonsense. Listen to this guy claim that Satanists are under your bed and stuff. Seriously. 1991.
Satanism exists in this country as it exists elsewhere.
No.
It is appallingly evil. It is about murder. It is about child abuse. It's about sexual abuse. It is no joke and must be taken seriously and must be dealt with.
If they can ritually abuse children, if they can in any way sexually abuse children, anything to destroy a child's innocence or their trust or their wonder at the world, they will do it.
Now, isn't that interesting? All the way back in 1991, we have an example of a member of parliament, among others, this supposed, what's this guy? Former Satanist, Bill Schnobelin, former Satanist, pretending to be an expert on this subject, claiming they're coming for your children. And if you don't do something ASAP, they're going to get them. They're going to get them. You better run. You better watch. They're coming for them. And what do we have Jack Hibbs doing now? Televangelist, Pastor Jack Hibbs.
Get them confused. They're young, early. Notice Satan always goes after the young.
Isn't that fascinating? Satan always goes after the young. No, he doesn't. There is no satanic cabal out there attempting to take advantage of the young or whatever other nonsense. The right has always used children against people. They have always, I'm talking people to the right of hunting the homeless for sport, have always looked for an opportunity to scare people, to make them think that if they don't do something, if they don't fix whatever, if they don't do exactly what this person says, then their political enemy right now, namely the left, is coming for your kids, and they're going to get them. It's only a matter of time. They're going to get you kids. You better run. Do what I say or they're going to get them. That's what the right's done since time immemorial. Since the beginning. Since 1991 at least. Honestly, way, way earlier than that. That's just like the one example that I have on this right now. 1991. And here we have another example of Jack Hibbs doing the exact same garbage all along. So anyways, it's all about your kids, right? They're coming after your kids. Keep going, Jack.
Then, if he can't kill him in the womb, he'll kill him in the head and confuse them. I believe we're watching a global demonic sway of the wicked one upon our culture in the world. And that sounds harsh, but...
Wait, it would sound harsh if it made any sense at all. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn that down a little bit. I feel like it was a little bit loud. Let's just try to step back. Listen again. What is it that he believes sounds harsh exactly?
Use them. I believe we're watching a global demonic sway of the wicked one upon our culture in the world.
So he believes that we're seeing a demonic sway upon our culture? I guess he means he believes that we're watching Satan, like, affect culture in some way. And he says that sounds harsh. I thought that was like standard Christian belief. How does that sound harsh? That's just like what every Christian believes. Or you're not even a Christian, right?
And that sounds harsh, but I'm sorry, it's true. It's just true.
Jesus Christ, dude. Okay. So anyway, that's Jack Hibbs. Oh God. I have four clips of this guy total. This is him, like this one right here that I have here. This is him talking about when Roe v. Wade was done away with and kind of gloating about it. And then I've got another, which is him openly and brazenly bragging about the fact that he's given up on the separation of church and state, and he's willing to just meld the two now. He's willing to just be open about the fact that there is no separation of church and state. So anyway, I guess I'm not going to play him at the moment. I'll play him if we need to. But let's listen to the interview between him and Gene Bailey. That's his name, Gene Bailey. Let's listen to the interview between them so you get an idea of who these people are, what they believe, what they're after, and the whole 9 yards. For the record, just give you a little bit of context here before we listen. Like I said, this show is owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland, and Kenneth Copeland backs Trump 100%. To the death, they back Trump. They will do anything for the guy. So whatever line Trump is pushing in that exact moment is the line that you can expect these people to be pushing on this program. So let's listen to what is effectively Donald Trump, really, interview Jack Hibbs, megachurch pastor.
I got to tell you, several years ago, I saw this video with you and Charlie Kirk, and I'd heard of Charlie, and I'd heard of you, but I thought, oh, okay, I'll see what he has to say. And boy, it was like it was over an hour long, but I was riveted listening, and that really opened. Around that season, a lot of things opened up. Obviously for Charlie and for you too. So I want to let's pick up kind of somewhere in the middle there. We're post-COVID. We just come out of COVID. Pastors now are trying to figure out, what do I do? What do I do? I'm being questioned. A lot of pastors were caught off guard with that. Do we close our church and listen to the government, or do we stand up? Okay,
it wasn't about listening to the government or even closing your church. It was not even about closing your church when COVID came along and affected everybody. You know what the government really asked churches to do? back in 2020, when all this was going on originally. They asked them to do one of three things. Specifically, they asked Tony Spell to do these things. He was kind of the, I don't know what you'd call it, like the face of the movement. The reason that Tony Spell was kind of the face of like the anti-church, like shutdown, lockdown, whatever movement is because Tony Spell actually got arrested. No joke. This is him walking with his Bible. He knows he's about to be arrested. He's in his suit. He's got his Bible. He's walking. And now he sees the camera, or he sees the sheriffs. He says, oh, okay, I'm turning around then. Yep, I'm running. And now they're coming after him. They're getting their cuffs out. They're grabbing him. They're cuffing the dude. They're taking the Bible. A Bible will be provided in jail if he can afford one. I mean, this is all for theater. He did this very intentionally. And like I said, you know, they didn't even ask him to shut his church down. There was no federal lockdown. He was the face of the whole lockdown movement. There was no federal lockdown at any point. And even state to state, the most any pastor was asked was to do one of three things. Either hold services on Zoom, or space your chairs out 6 feet, or hold services outside for, I don't know, 6 months. That's all they were asked to do. They weren't told you can't come to church and preach anymore. It's against the law for you to preach. They weren't told that. They were simply told you got to space your chairs out a little bit. And what did these people do? Nothing. They got people killed is what they did, intentionally. Tony Spell was the face of the movement, but how many thousands of people died because of not just what Tony Spell did, but because of what like all of these other pastors did, including but not limited to this guy right here on screen, Jack Hibbs. They didn't ask you to close your doors. All you had to do was space your chairs out or hold service outside. Couldn't even do that because you want to act like a victim. Is this what Jesus would do? Is this the kind of thing that we could have expected from Jesus? Of course not. Because in the Bible, Jesus wasn't a scumbag. He didn't use, opportunities to get up on his soapbox and make an ass of himself the way that these people did. So anyways, I just want to clear that up. They did not at any point tell pastors to close their doors. Ever. That never happened. They didn't tell pastors to close their doors. They didn't even tell them to stop holding church service. Nothing. All they said, some state governments, was hold services on Zoom, or hold it outside, or space the chairs out. That's it. Couldn't even do that.
We close our church and listen to the government, or do we stand up? What is the most crucial part about pastoring when it comes to standing up?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just going to be blunt about it.
Please.
This way. If you're a pastor, you're called to the ministry that God has placed you in, and that is shepherding the flock of God's people. Number one, historically, we know that when the bubonic plague hit Europe, Martin Luther kept his churches open, for example.
Okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but if that's true, Martin Luther was a f***ing idiot. If Martin Luther kept his churches open during the bubonic plague, he was a moron. I'm sorry. He was stupid. He was dumb as dog to do something so reckless and dangerous. If that's really true. Something tells me that these people are just lying about it. They just love lying through their teeth. But okay. You know what? I should probably look this up. Did Martin Luther actually... I mean, when was the bubonic plague? Did it even occur at the same time? Yeah, sure enough, he did. He did keep his... Allegedly. I mean, it's hard to know for sure. Allegedly, Martin Luther did keep his church open through... By the way, Martin Luther and Martin Luther King Jr. are two different people. Martin Luther was the guy that was responsible for the split between Catholicism and Protestantism, and it was all the way back in like the 1500s. Yeah, 1546 is when Martin Luther was, wandering around, I think. Martin Luther King Jr. is a completely different person. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I reiterate, Martin Luther was a moron. Or just uninformed, one or the other. Or both, I suppose. It could be both. As an Orthodox Christian, my church held live streams of church services. Even though they were upset about it, they understood the reason. Yeah, absolutely. You know what's interesting? Jehovah's Witnesses held Zoom meetings for a long time. Now, there was a limit to that. There was a line. They wanted people to kind of come back to the meetings eventually, and they pushed people to by various means. Like, they said, if you're not disabled or you don't have a valid reason to, not go to the meetings anymore, then you need to show up. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses really laid it on the line at one point. But they took it seriously, to their credit. Jehovah's Witnesses did. They were careful. They took it seriously. They wanted to make sure nobody died because of the stupid decisions that they made. So that's respectable. At least more respectable than these people. You got to say that, right? By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but their microphones are the exact same microphone I have.
Kept his churches open, for example. When the cholera epidemic hit Europe, right, Charles Spurgeon and others, all of the clergy agreed, we got to keep our churches open.
Okay, I don't know who the hell Charles Spurgeon is or why I should care, but if he kept his church open through an epidemic, then he was an idiot. And he didn't know what he was doing, and he was getting people killed. And you know what? If there's a hell, he'll probably be there for how much blood he has on his hands. How many pastors have blood on their hands because of what they did during plagues, knowing that they could have saved somebody's life, but instead chose to bring people in to the church and spread these illnesses anyways? Sad and disgusting, dude. I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you really want to have that blood on your hands, if you really want to possibly face the judgment of God when the time comes, okay. It's not my ass facing the judgment of God, it's yours. So, whatever. Who am I to argue, right? I got another super chat from City Rail Dude here. If it were true, Martin Luther weren't any stupider than anyone else in the Middle Ages. They just didn't understand disease. They had bloodletting. You're right. Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. If it's true, Martin Luther wasn't more intelligent than others. Yeah, I mean, they just didn't understand how the bubonic plague was spread. If they understood how the bubonic plague was spread, they would have put a stop to it, because it was really easy to stop. You just have to take a bath, basically. And you have to, deal with your rat problem. That's it. That's all you had to do. And boom. No more bubonic plague. So, yeah. You're absolutely right, City Rail Dude. I mean, Martin Luther wasn't any more or less intelligent than anybody else. This guy is just using a situation in which nobody really understood what was going on to claim that Martin Luther, or to at least imply, not claim, but imply, that Martin Luther was fully aware of what was going on and intentionally chose to get people killed instead.
And so this pandemic comes along, and it's not like, for pastors, this was not strange territory. Historically, we knew two things: that the church was always open during a time of crisis to assist in the crisis.
It's been open during that time of crisis to assist, right? It's been available for people to get aid from churches, and not all the time either. Need I remind you what happened with Joel Osteen in Texas during the hurricane? Some people say it's not a fair criticism of Joel Osteen. Let me just kind of explain the situation. There was a hurricane that took place in Texas where Joel Osteen is stationed or set up, or where his church exists or whatever. His church is a gigantic, stadium, basically, like a football stadium. It's huge. Holds tens of thousands of people, his church does, right? And Joel Osteen, during this hurricane, had the choice of unlocking his church doors and allowing people whose homes had just been destroyed in to stay there until, to wait until the storm passes. Joel Osteen had that choice. What did he do? Did he let people into his megachurch at the time? Oh, no. Of course he didn't. He locked the doors. He locked people out who were in need. That's what megachurch pastor Joel Osteen did. Locked people out. Now, in all fairness to Joel Osteen, there was verifiably damage to the, his megachurch's, whole thing. Water damage. There was water damage to his megachurch. In fairness to him, maybe he shouldn't have opened it up. I mean, that argument could be made. Could be. I only mention it to, for the sake of completion here. He should have opened his doors, Joel Osteen, to people, though, ultimately, during a hurricane. So this guy says, Jack Hibbs, he says, the church is there to make sure that people are doing okay during times, during difficult times. No, they aren't. Never have been. Since the very beginning. Churches have been expected to be open and available and ready to help people, but they haven't, weirdly. Churches simply aren't around. Churches simply aren't there to help other people. How weird is that? So, anyways, how do you help in a pandemic is the real question. Because that's what he's saying right now. The church should be able to help in a pandemic, right? They should stay open so they can help in a pandemic. Sure. Okay. Absolutely. And how do you do that? By offering food aid to people. By offering to help the elderly if they need it. Certainly not by opening your doors wide open and inviting anybody and everybody in that wants to come in. Certainly not by inviting people in who may or may not spread the virus to others, and not spacing the chairs out 6 feet, not holding services on Zoom, not holding services outside. That is an example, or those are examples of things that you would not do if you didn't give a shit about people, if you only wanted to take part in a culture war.
Strange territory. Historically, we knew two things: that the church was always open during a time of crisis to assist in the crisis. But the most important thing of all is...
Did Jack Jack Hibbs, did he assist in the COVID crisis? Did he give any aid at all to anybody? Is there a single example anywhere that somebody can find of Jack Hibbs helping somebody deal with the virus in some way? I would be willing to bet he hasn't helped anybody with anything, but that's neither here nor there.
The Bible's very clear that there's a time for us to obey God, and when that time, when man challenges us to disobey God, we always side with obeying God. Do you obey Gavin Newsom in my state,
Sure.
or do you obey God? And so
See, there's the false dichotomy. Do you obey God or do you obey Gavin Newsom? There is no conflict. You can obey both simultaneously. Now, the Bible specifically says in Romans, what is it? Is it Romans 1? I don't remember. Romans 13, something or other? I don't remember. Anyways, the Bible specifically says, obey the governing authorities. They were placed there by God to protect people or to whatever, to make sure that people are okay. They were placed there for God's sake. Or they were placed there for your sake by God. That's what it says. Now he's going to completely ignore that verse, isn't he? He's going to pretend it's not there. Why? Because it's more convenient.
became quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Angel and more. Thank you for becoming a member. I appreciate it. Old Testament has very clear instructions about isolation and hygiene, which is why I believe there are rules about menstruation. What happened with that when the New Testament happened? Did you see my post for the clearing? I don't think I saw your post for that, but yes, you're absolutely right. And that's an interesting point you bring up there about the Old Testament having very specific things about hygiene. So during the days of the bubonic plague, it was actually a really, really easy problem to fix, okay? The reason that the bubonic plague was spreading really boiled down to a couple of things. It was being passed by rats, from my understanding. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this. Check the comments to see if this is correct information or not when this is finally done. But I believe that it was being passed through rats, and it was basically as simple as taking a bath and dealing with their rat problem. That would have solved the bubonic plague issue. Actually, I think it was being passed through fleas on those rats, from my understanding. Yeah, like I said, it wouldn't have been that hard to deal with if they had known what the problem was, if they could figure out what the issue was and how to deal with it and all that other stuff. But they never did figure that out. Now, as far as what you said there, the Old Testament had a bunch of rules about this thing and that thing. It's interesting you mention. Jews had those rules in the Old Testament. You're absolutely right. Jews had those rules. And instead, and as a result, they followed the rules differently from Christians. Like, they treated dead bodies differently than Christians did during the bubonic plague. They just had different hygiene rules during the bubonic plague, and that led to a lower rate of bubonic plague death by Jews than Christians, which led to Christians blaming the plague on the Jews because they didn't understand what was causing it. All they knew was that the Jews weren't catching it. And suddenly, they've got a culprit. They've got somebody to blame. They've got someone to aim their ire at. So it was like the source of an unimaginable amount of conspiracy theories about Jews back in the 1500s and everything when the plague was being passed around. Anti-Semitic conspiracies abound as a direct result of what was happening between Jews, the bubonic plague, Christians, so on and so forth. So, yeah. Interesting you bring that up. Anyway, okay, let's keep listening to Jack Hibbs.
Clearly, a case in California where the church had to be open. I encouraged all the pastors in California to open up. Where a lot of people don't know about this, but 1,200 pastors opened up with us on the same Sunday. And what's remarkable is that we took a stand based upon the Bible. We were not...
The Bible did not tell you to open your church doors despite the fact that a pandemic was spreading through society. The Bible did not say that. Just want to clarify.
Shaking our fist at the government, but I did send a note, a video announcement actually, to the governor, announcing to him, with all due respect, Mr. Governor, this is the role of the church. Number one, you've failed to address the church as essential or non-essential, which, by the way, allowed...
It is non-essential and always has been, and guess what? Always will be, for the church to meet inside or in person rather than on Zoom, or to space their chairs out closer than 6 feet. It's non-essential for the church to do that. The church can operate adequately and still meet on Zoom or meet outside or space their chairs 6 feet apart. That's possible. So this whole non-essential or essential argument, or this whole, oh, they tried to shut us down thing, it's just bullshit. All of it. It's nonsense. Every last bit of this is persecution complex garbage. He is obsessed with himself and was looking for a fight. He was looking for some way to make himself look special. And he found it.
Way it allowed me to define. Right, if he didn't define the position of the church, then I believe it's up to the pastor to remind the governing powers that the church is not essential or non-essential. The church is transcendent. So in light of that, Mr. Governor...
Right, so the church is not essential or non-essential. It's beyond essential or non-essential. You see how that works? Dummies. Should have known better. These people are for real. They're serious. They really believe this garbage. No one ever asked you to close your doors. All we asked is for you to space your chairs out or hold service outside. That's it. Or, worst case, hold it on Zoom. They can't take the most basic step. You know why? Because they want to make martyrs of themselves. Because they want to pretend to be persecuted. That's why they're doing what they're doing. Plain and simple. If any churches closed their doors or shut down, it was not because of what they're claiming, but because of their own choices. Yeah, exactly. There was no federal lockdown. The federal government did not tell any church they have to shut their doors at any point. Ever. There was, a state-to-state shutdown, depending on which state it was or what they, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It just kind of depended. But either way, being in person was non-essential. Being in person was not necessary for you to get the message. Or, at the very least, being inside without a mask, separated by 6 inches, was unnecessary. But okay, go ahead. Cry about being persecuted more.
Governor, we're going to have our doors open. We're going to be ministering to the needs of the community. If you need...
Oh, he's going to be ministering to the needs of the community. Okay. Wow. So we should be able to look and find out what he's done for the community then, right? Because he says that he's ministering to the needs of the community. What did you do for the community, Jack? You said you helped the community. You opened your doors, you helped the community. What'd you do? Give me an exact accounting of the things that you did to help the community. Spoiler alert, he did nothing.
anything, let us know, but we're going forward. And that's exactly what happened. And we wound up baptizing over 3,000 people on 3 different Saturdays. We had to break it up, 1,000 people a weekend, because so many people rushed to our church because they were looking for hope in time of crisis. And I know, I can't speak for any other ministries because I don't know about them, but I know that by taking a stand, we saw people who were on the brink of suicide come to church as one last hope and wind up having their lives transformed.
Amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Totally. 100%. I believe it without question. I'm wondering how many people actually died of COVID as a result of what Jack Hibbs did. He said he took part in this whole thing with 1,200 other churches, right? How many people died of COVID because of them? I wonder. How many deaths are they responsible for? How many deaths we got right now? It looks like we got 1.134 million deaths in the United States at this immediate moment. That's what it's looking like right now. 1.134 million deaths. Now, how many of those 1.134 million deaths were this guy's fault for opening his doors to 3,000 people and allowing them to get in the same water, basically bathe in the same water together and breathe all over each other and sneeze on each other? How many deaths is Jack Hibbs responsible for, I wonder? Exactly. Of those 1,134,300. You know, on YouTube, sometimes I'm hanging out. I've mentioned this, but it's something I think about from time to time. I'll tell you guys about it. Sometimes people come and go on my channel, and that's okay. You know, they've got other things going on in their lives. They're busy. It's not a big deal, you know? I do the exact same thing. Sometimes I lose interest in a channel, or I get busy, and I'm learning a new skill, or I'm picking up a hobby or whatever, and I just kind of move on and move away from a YouTube channel, and that's okay. You know, that's okay. But it makes me wonder during COVID how many, like, diehard fans, like real fans of mine, come here every single day, talk in the chat, talk to each other, have Discord groups and all this other stuff. How many of those people hung out with each other or came to every single stream and super chatted and talked to me and everything and died of COVID? And I'll never know. I'll just think that they lost interest in me because they're dead. They're gone. How many people did that happen to? Statistically, I looked this up recently. I think I have somewhere in the vicinity of 800,000 unique views per month. 800,000 unique views. That's how many. If COVID causes somewhere in the range of, I don't know, let's go low, say 2% mortality rate. Let's go real low. Let's say 0.5% of a mortality rate. 800,000 unique views. 0.5% of my audience. That's 4,000 people who used to watch my YouTube channel, who used to like it, who used to pay attention, who used to keep up with this stuff, who used to do everything they could to fight the good fight and prevent people from whatever, who used to super chat, who used to talk to me, who used to comment and mention their thoughts, send me messages all the time, send me emails, leave me voicemails. 4,000 people. And they're gone. And I'll never know which ones they were. I'll never know which ones lost interest naturally, just weren't really into my channel anymore, and which ones just died loving my channel and never having an opportunity to really tell me. I will never know. But one thing I can tell you, Jack Hibbs here doesn't give a shit. He is ready for you to accept the consequences of his actions. He's ready for you to die for his sake. How sick is this guy, honestly? Does it get more, like, depraved than this mindset that we see on full display here? He says, we got 3,000 people into a packed little room right at the height of COVID, right when things were spreading, right when people were at their worst, when things were most dangerous, when they were dying. We got 3,000 people together in a confined little space to hang out together, to bathe in the same water. Their deaths are on his conscience. And if there's a hell, which of course I don't believe there is, I'm an atheist, but if there is a hell, you can bet your bottom dollar that that's where he's going to be spending the rest of eternity for doing what he did when it counted most. He had the opportunity to save people's lives, and instead, what did he do? He killed them instead. Happily, with a smile on his face, so he could get a little more money in the collection plate.
And your church has grown since that time.
Oh, well, you know, we averaged about 10,000 people every weekend anyway,
Right.
but now it's 15,000 people every weekend on a regular basis. So
My God, dude, that is a lot of people. 15,000 people. I mean, you can't really trust his numbers, but he is a mega church, so I think it's fair to say he had 10,000. I'm comfortable with that assessment. At least 10,000 people. Dude had 10,000 people at his mega church. That is crazy.
yes.
And every pastor I talked to that stood up and is standing
Yep.
up without, like you said, shaking
Yeah.
your fist in the air and, you know,
Right.
purporting violence and everything, you know, their churches have, because people want to know, just give me something an anchor to hold on
Right.
to. And so that's what we're seeing as well, is churches are exploding in growth, but it always comes back to the pastor. I know the old saying, like pastor, like pew.
It's true.
If they see the pastor
Wait, light pastor, light pew? I have never heard that in my life. What the hell does that mean? Can somebody explain that to me?
standing up, they're going to stand up.
It's true. And they did stand up. And it was beautiful because immediately what we provided was
Wait, what did you provide?
a religious exemption form
Right.
for anyone. They didn't have to attend our church. We actually had those
Wow, are you kidding me? You provided a religious exemption form for people, whether they attended your church or not. So not only were you hurting the people at your church, you were hurting all of society. I mean, he was hurting all of society anyways, right? Because he was hurting the people whose families were, you know, being affected by the decisions that he made, that his churchgoers made. But it wasn't just them, come to find out. According to him, it wasn't just them. He was providing any religious exemption for anybody who wanted one. That is some shit right there. Does it get more depraved than that, honestly?
PDF forms. They were produced by one of our law firms, and they were sent out nationally from military personnel to school teachers to construction workers.
This sounds like the no blood card Jehovah's Witnesses have. I don't know if Jack Hibbs medical directive or medical exemption form or whatever held any legal weight. I'm not sure, maybe. But Jehovah's Witnesses no blood card most definitely does hold legal weight, and it's not good. It is not good. I carried a no blood card my entire childhood. If I'd gotten in a car accident, and a serious one, a bad one, when I was little, I wouldn't be here talking to you today because of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm really, really lucky in a lot of ways. So what did this medical exemption form even provide, I wonder? Like, what was it an exemption from? The vaccine didn't exist yet, presumably, right? Was it an exemption from what? I don't know.
That I am exercising my constitutional right. By having a religious exemption regarding the vaccine, if they chose to do that.
Oh, I guess it wasn't a vaccine thing. Well, unfortunately for these people, if they had made a vaccine hesitancy thing part of their core beliefs before this culture war issue arose, I might be more willing to believe them. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't believe a word out of their mouth. Dude, did I just get hit by a rock? And did this rock just pass through the dragon? No, I just got struck by lightning, didn't I? Is that what happened? I have no idea what just happened to me. Medical exemption for vaccines is complete nonsense to me. There is no religious group out there that believes in medical exemptions. There is no religious group out there who believes that vaccines are evil. There's no Christian passage, no biblical passage they can turn to tell them that vaccines are bad. There's no biblical basis they can come up with, no nothing. Because vaccines were just created, 150, 200 years ago, somewhere in that vicinity, right? But these people are going to come up with their little forms, their little explanations anyways, their little exemptions that they're going to hand out to everybody they know. Medical exemption form for Christians, medical exemption from getting vaccinated. There is no doctrinal explanation for why you don't believe in vaccines or for why you wouldn't get a vaccine. As a matter of fact, the fact that you're not getting a vaccine is actually anti-biblical. You're putting other people's lives at risk at your own, for your own interests, basically. That's not what Jesus would do. Being anti-vax is the least Christian thing I can possibly imagine. Anyways, let me know what you think about Jack Hibbs. I think he's a complete scumbag, honestly. Just the way that he operates, the things that he says and does. Oh, my God. I really want to be on this derp's nose here. Look at this derp right here. You see this derp? Look at this derpy face right here. And the eyes move every now and then like a derp. Anyways, let me know what you think about Jack Hibbs. I think he's terrible, honestly. I think he's awful. And I think he's only getting worse, and he's doing his absolute best to be reactionary and extreme and as loud as humanly possible to draw as much attention as he can to himself. He's terrible. Let me know what you think about him in the comments.